Be careful of making choices and decisions that they look, may ask you, they don't look serious, they don't look too big, they look like you can handle them. They just look like everyday choices until few weeks down the line, few months down the line, a year down the line, then you find out that, hey, the source of all these problems that have come my way, all the disappointment, mistakes that has come my way, I can trace them back to the beginning of this small, insignificant choice that I made. Try to make choices that look very insignificant, but gradually they will pile up or they'll build up to become significant success along the way.
Welcome to Conversation, story behind my book with Rev Stephen Nyenty, where we share insightful stories from each of his books, an amazing topic that will be a great blessing to us from the book. I am Akisu Okwemi, and I have with me here today Rev Stephen Nyenty.
Hello everyone, thank you for being a part of the discussion. Hope you engaged.
So it's good to have you here on our book today. So in today's episode, we'll be looking at how relevant is insight, hindsight, foresight to our lives as individuals and as female figure in all aspects of our lives. So now looking at that from that angle is going to be a wonderful episode. So stay tuned. So like this video, comment on this video, and turn on your notification button so as not to miss out from any of our updates. So welcome once again. Okay, if you've been following, you would have been noticing a trend of conversation. We've been discussing the last 3 episodes on this book, Sisters, Insight, Foresight, and Hindsight. And amazing enough, we'll be looking at different Bible characters from the Bible. We have learned from how their life has impacted their decision, how their decision making have impacted their life personally. The first person we look at in our episode in this place is Rebecca. We look at Rebecca, Sister Foresight. So the question was, are you a person of foresight? Your decision, the things you do, are they coming from a place of foresight or just mere hearsay or a spontaneous decision making, or they are coming from a place of foresight? And we established in that episode, foresight also can be prophetic. Yes, we look at the life of Rebecca. She made certain decisions. She did certain things in the life of her children because of she knew what God was saying at the time. So it came as a result of foresight. So as a woman figure watching this, as an individual watching this, are you a person of foresight? Are you a person who doesn't just do things sporadically, but then you are gleaning to know what God is having you to do at different phases of your life? Yes, so it is important that we are people of foresight. Another episode we look at Delilah, the slave queen. But before we looked at Delilah, the slave queen, we looked at Rahab, the prostitute. And we look at how there was a dynamic. So let me talk about Rahab first. Look at how Rahab, who was, nobody would have just woken up and named their child the prostitute. But as she lived her life, there was a name attached to her, Rahab the prostitute. And we look at the fact that as individuals, what name over the years that we have lived on the surface of the earth has been attached to us. Yes. And we look at how God can, transform our lives from certain phase we are in into a different phase based on how we live our lives. So we look at Rahab. She met the Philistines and she came into a covenant and agreement, let me put it that with them. And she kept to her part. And that decision to keep the spies, yes, that came to spy on Jericho, actually what informed a lot of things about her, because Jericho was going to be destroyed. And then she offered to do what she one of the things we looked at is how does being helpful impact Rahab's life and her family. Because of that attitude, that help she rendered, it transformed a lot of things. She was known for something. She was known for being a prostitute. But then because of that decision that she made as an individual, it transformed a lot of things about her. It brought her into the lineage of Jesus, like if you're a Bible student, you would know by now. It actually also delivered her family from being destroyed because Jericho was brought down. But because of that, she was spared. Her family was spared. Another person we looked at is Delilah, the slave queen. We are in that episode. It was quite a very engaging one. So if you've not watched any of this episode, you're missing out already. So do well to go to the playlist of Sisters Inside, Foresight, and Insight on our channel and watch these videos, because if you've not watched any of this video, you're missing out already. So talking about Delilah being the slave queen, we look at what does it mean to be a Delilah. We talk about being a person who is ravishing. Talk about the looks, the gesture that comes with being a Delilah, the expression of being a slave queen. And we looked at the Bible, and we understood that there were certain things that made Delilah stand out, that made her stood out in her time as a what? As a slave queen. She entered into relationship with Samson basically because of money. So it was not maybe because she wanted to help them bring Samson down. She's not a special agent, she's not a detective, she's not an undercover. But there was money attached. She went into the relationship for that sole reason. Yeah. So we looked at the fact that as women figure, are we into relationship with people? Are we gold diggers? So, and then, we try not to talk about the popular thing, the popular conversation we know about what it means to be a Delilah, what it means to be a slave queen. We attacked, or let me say, we discussed very salient characteristics of a Delilah. Yes, like being a naga, like being manipulative, you would not have known. We talked about being a psychopath. Would you have known that a slave queen can have that characteristics or a tendency to be a psychopath? If you don't, and if you are wondering, that's why you need to go back to that video. Yes, Delilah the slave queen. It is just right there on our channel. So click to watch that video, and it will bless you greatly. So, like I said, in today's episode, we'll be looking at insight, foresight, and insight. How is this relevant to our daily life as women figure, as individuals watching these videos? So I think at this point, we'd like Reverend to shed light on how relevant this topic is to us as individuals.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ope, for the quick summary of the last 3 weeks of discussion. Now, thinking back about the book, Sisters Insight, Foresight, and Insight, and why that book was written, it occurred to me, I think, some few days back, the importance of that subtopic, insight, foresight, and insight, as the main key factor for that book being written. Sisters, I really wanted something that I really wanted to bring lessons that we can learn from these guys in the Bible that can give us discernment in making wise and strategic decisions or choices. And so I took the liberty, which I realized I didn't do in the book. So I took the liberty to define what insight and a foresight and insight is. So I'll be reading out some definitions, then we can start the discussion, all right? So, what is insight? Is right there on the screen already. Insight is the ability to have, now I want you to notice, is the ability to have a clear, deep, and sometimes sudden understanding of a complicated problem or situation. Insight is to have a clear, a deep, and sometimes some sudden understanding of a complicated problem or situation. Now, there have been times where I have practically been in a situation where my head is clouded. You can call it cobwebs. Cobwebs are in my head, and maybe my head is full of water, uh, and I can't think. There are problems right in front of me. There are challenges right in front of me, and my head is full. Have you been in that situation? And chances are, if I make choices or decisions at that time, it is definitely a wrong one. Definitely, definitely a wrong one. And I realize that many people, it's not gender bias, many. So I will not say only the females, I will say both male and female get to a point where such happens. And they say shit happens. Such happens. And when such happens, it becomes a requirement that you need insight. Because at that point, everywhere is foggy. You can't see clearly. You don't know what to do next. You don't know how to pray. You don't even know what to pray about. You don't know who to talk to at that point. In fact, everywhere seems to be so crowded, foggy, confusing. you need discernment. And one of the primary step, or one of the first step into discernment, is insight. The ability to have a clear, a deep, and sometimes sudden understanding of a complicated problem or situation. So I found out that many of the females we had to write about in the book, Sisters, Insight, Foresight, and Hindsight, were people who were confronted with sudden problems that they couldn't have solved merely on their own. They needed some form of wisdom, they needed some form of insight, they needed some form of foresight. They needed something that can give them an edge, an extra edge to make choices, to make appropriate decision. And that is what this book is about. So he said the ability to have a clear, a deep, and sometimes sudden understanding of a complicated problem or situation. So are you in a complicated problem? Are you in a complicated situation? I can tell you one thing for sure. I always find myself in complicated issues. I always find myself in complicated problems. I always find myself in complicated situations where God knows I need a breakthrough. I need insight at that point. I need to know what I'm doing. Let's know what we're doing. I need to really know what I'm doing. And should I tell you one shocking realization? I found out not everybody knows what they are doing. You know, they say common sense, use your common sense. How about if common sense is not common? So, how about if you think you can solve a problem, but then when you get into that shit, into that problem, you find out that it's gone beyond your pay grade. You've not prepared your whole life. You've not been exposed. You've not your education. Nothing has exposed you to tackling these problems, and yet the problem has come. How do you confront them? Chances are you're going to fall into the gutter. You're going to make terrible mistakes. That is why we need insight. Then we look at foresight. Now, I'm not giving definitions, then I'll tell you how relevant and how it relates. All right. So we look at foresight here. Foresight is the ability to judge correctly what is going to happen in the future and plan your actions based on this knowledge. So you need insight. So take any situation as an example you are currently going through. You need to be able to accurately evaluate the problem. You need to sit back and take stock, evaluate the problem. You need to sit back and say, okay, this is to what extent this problem is. You need to even understand to what extent this problem is. Sometimes you think you see many women, they think they have just a boy on their breast. I know it's just a boy to go, it will go. And suddenly they take it, it doesn't go. 3 weeks, 2 months, it's not going. Then they take it to the hospital and they say, hey, hey, if you had come early, it's something we could have done. This thing has become a lump and it is growing cancer. Kai, God forbid. You see, you didn't know to what extent that small boy like whatever was on your breast. You didn't know. You didn't know. You see, but if you had known, you would have taken serious decisions, made serious decisions, smart ones, to solving the problem. That is what insight does. But insight leads you, once you have insight, it leads you to foresight. You see, it is systematic. Once you have insight, it leads you to foresight. Because usually, if you do not appreciate to what extent the problem you are in is, or if you do not appreciate to what extent the circumstances you are in is, if you do not appreciate to what extent what is going on with you, you are likely to take it as a joke, play around it, not take it serious until it slips by. So when we talk about sisters, we are looking at sisters with insight, because every female will definitely have issues that need overcoming. And many times you cannot widely appreciate to what extent this small looking problem is until you're falling into the dish. Recently, I had a short dream, and in the dream, I felt the Lord was talking to me about one of our people here, and I had to tell this person, I said, "See, be careful of making subtle decisions." He said, "Be careful of taking a decision or making decisions that look subtle, though they don't look like they carry much implication or much consequence now, and then you find out later on that at that point was the beginning of all the other problems that have come. Be careful. Be careful of making choices and decisions that they look may ask you, they don't look serious, they don't look too big, they look like you can handle them, they just look like everyday choices until few weeks down the line, few months down the line, a year down the line, then you find out that, hey, the source of all these problems that have come my way, all the disappointment, mistakes that has come my way, I can trace them back to the beginning of this small, insignificant choice that I made. And the Lord was telling this person, be careful. And then the Lord continued and said, you know what? Be careful of what try now. Now the Lord was telling me, be careful, warning. Now an encouragement comes and says, now try to make choices that look very insignificant, but gradually they will pile up or they will build up to become significant success along the way. So you see, God gave a warning, then He gave an encouragement. But the baseline is insignificant. So the ability to judge correctly, to evaluate, to scale something correctly, and plan your life and your actions accordingly based on that knowledge is foresight. Now let's look at insight here. Then we look at the scripture. Why why this book is written. What is insight? The ability to understand an event or situation only after it has happened. Sometimes you need to look back to appreciate what is going to come up for you. Sometimes when I look back at certain events in my life, I'm able to, I have come to terms to appreciate what the chances that it will happen again. So the mistakes a lot of us make is that we lack insight. We do not appreciate foresight, and definitely we are not into insight. If you are not a lover of history here, if you are not a lover of real life history, real life biographical matters, chances are you lack either, in fact, you lack the three. Yeah? And I'm going to show you. Chances are you lack the three. Because you see, a personality that loves biography, a personality that loves history, a personality that loves to know what happened in the past. The Bible says in the book of Ecclesiastes, what was in the past is what will be now. So whatever happened last time in your life, whatever happened last time in your relationships, whatever happened last time, whatever you got yourself involved in, is more likely to repeat itself again. That's why they say history always repeats itself. And then you say, "Oh no, that's not what I'm into. No, I'm not into those things. What am I into? I don't know, but I'm not into those things." Chances are you lack insight, you lack foresight, and definitely you lack insight. Now let's look at the book of Proverbs. I want to show you how this relates. Proverbs. Alright, sorry. Proverbs. The book of Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 27. Proverbs chapter 27. We'll read from two versions of the Bible. Proverbs chapter 27, verse 12. I'll verse read from the TPT and then I'll read from the NLT. Proverbs chapter 27, verse 12 is a popular verse of the Bible for me. Now, but I want you to notice something here. A wise, shrewd person discerns the danger ahead, evaluates the danger ahead, is able to come to terms that no, this danger, it is this big. No, this danger is this small. Is in many of us we cannot differentiate when something is really complicated and when something doesn't worth worrying about. We worry about everything. So we don't take so once we get to the extreme, we don't take our life seriously. And some of us, we too take our life seriously that we qualify to be Yaba left. It depends on which side of the coin you are in. But you can stay in the middle and say, I'm a wise person. And as a wise person, I discern. I'm able to determine that this is to what extent the problem is, and this is to what extent the problem is. I'm able to differentiate to what extent, to how, what is the implication of my problems. A wise person discerns the danger ahead, and what does he do? As foresight to allow him, or as foresight to allow him, prepares himself. Foresight prepares you. You know very well that if I'm to be who I say I want to be, people now look at now the president I don't know about the president of Nigeria, but the presidents of America, they all attend the same university. They all go to the same school. So if I say God is calling me to be the president of America, chances are I should attend the same school. There are specific higher institution I must attend. There are specific courses I should take. There are specific relationships I must get into. It does not just I don't just go from. That's why there's this pastor in Nigeria that said God told him to be the president of Nigeria. Now, after several tries, to me, I don't want to judge. There's no trend that says we listen, we don't judge. So I don't want to judge really. But then preparation is necessary. Foresight. When you know to what extent the importance of your life, the demand on your life is, you prepare. When you know to what extent the implication of your relationships are, you take precaution. When you know to what extent certain things are paramount to your life, you don't joke around with them. So a wise, shrewd person discerns the danger ahead and prepares himself. But the naive never looks ahead and suffers the consequences. Now, a different version of the Bible says, from the LNT, a prudent person foresees danger and takes precaution. But you see, the simple goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. So there are consequences for us if we do not take precaution. And that is where we look at the lives of these female characters in the Bible. The female characters of the Bible just tells us that where insight, where foresight, and where hindsight is lacking in a person's life, and it's not a factor in their decision making, life-threatening mistakes are inevitable. And I don't know to what extent, I don't know what you define as a life-threatening mistake. I don't know. I will leave that to you to tell us in the comment section. But whatever life-threatening mistake you think is life-threatening to you, you can scale through not just by faith or by prayer, but you can scale through by insight, foresight, and insight. Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Amazing. That was a lot Reverend just shared. It was talking about what insight is, talking about foresight, talking about insight. As Reverend was shared, I was just remembering the gift of the Spirit, talking about the gift of word of knowledge, the gift of word of wisdom, and being able to see something that's going on now. You are inspired to know the now beyond what you're seeing physically, and being able to make decisions ahead, yes, of the future that you have ahead of you. And having overall of those two, then you're able to sit back, analyze both things that happened to you, and then you're able to come to honest terms with yourself. That okay, in these things that played out in my life. So if I'm in this circumstance any other time, any other day, I know what to prepare to expect and what to avoid. That is answer. Coming to terms with okay, whatever it is that played out in either of the phases of your life, and learning something from them, gaining something from them, holding on to something from them. That okay, if you're going to be in that state again, you are able to do better. Yeah. So I hope that this episode, yes, from talking about Rebecca being a sister of Foresight, talking about Rahab the prostitute, talking about Delilah being the slave queen, and I'm talking about the relevance of insight, foresight, and insight in our individual life. I hope these videos have been a great testimony to us. They've been a great blessing rather to us. So do well to use the comment section because we'd love to hear from you. We are bringing a whole lot to your view, and we hope and we are trusting that you engage. Use the comment section. It doesn't bite. So use the comment section, share your views with us, ask your question if there are any, turn on your notification so as to stay updated. God bless you. See you soon.